Welcome to the Advanced Freelancing Podcast. Every week, you'll hear strategies for building your online service-based business your way. And now, here's your host, veteran freelancer, author, and TEDx speaker, Laura Briggs.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Advanced Freelancing Podcast. As you know, from time to time, I love to bring on other freelancers who are doing the thing and getting the results. And my guest today is a great example of that. So we have known each other for a while, and I've been able to see how her business has really grown, and she's really made a name for herself, especially on LinkedIn. So we're going to talk about a lot of things about how she started and scaled her business with a focus on LinkedIn. So I'm going to go ahead and have her introduce herself for you all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline, and I am pretty young. So I do want to start off by saying I am 23 years old. I graduated from college only last year, spent about 9 months working at a startup before I decided to quit pretty suddenly and launch into freelancing full time. Specifically in my business, I do SEO, blog writing, and strategy for tech companies of all sizes, and it's been very fun so far.
I love that you called out your age and your early success, because I think it's highlighting something where the freelancing market is really going. You know, in the past, people would kind of go and do a job for 3 years, 5 years, and then might along the way discover that it wasn't a fit for them and then make that jump. But I'm increasingly seeing more people who either never try to get a traditional job at all, or like in your case, they work one and then kind of decide, no, I want to do something different. Can you talk about your decision-making process? Like, what did that look like for you as far as leaving your job?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really hard. And not because it was hard for me personally, really, is the sad part. It was because I felt a lot of pressure to do a job. I mean, I had only graduated at that point. Like a few months before. Really, I think it was 5 months before I left to start freelancing full time. And, I was worried about what are my parents going to think? What is my fiance going to think? Like, what are these people going to think? And what are any potential future employers going to think, having seen me leave a job so suddenly and quickly and start freelancing at the age of 23, having had quote unquote, not a lot of real working experience. And I had to sit with that for a few months and it was extremely stressful. And at the end of the day, I said, you know what? I've got one life. I really want to try this now because I don't have kids. I don't have a mortgage, right? Like my responsibilities are actually quite limited financially. So now is the time to see if this works. So I may as well try now. And that, I think, was the real revelation of actually, in my case, I feel that it would be easier to try this at a younger age and see if I like it, see if it works. And that was really powerful. And that's what encouraged me to make that decision.
I love that you took your experience and really thought about it, because it's not something where you should necessarily make that leap before you're ready. Were you nervous about, did you have concerns around replacing your income or ideas around what you wanted to bring in financially to support you when you made that leap?
Absolutely. So here's another kind of sad thing. But when you work for a startup, you make pennies, especially if you're entry level. So, and I'll be completely transparent. I really believe in the power of talking about what you're making. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, where you are considered poor if you make anything less than six figures because of the astronomical cost of living. At this company, I was making $40,000 a year. So I was poor. I mean, I was very, very poor. And the only reason that was okay for me is because my fiance is a software engineer at Google. And so the percentage of things like rent or expenses that I would pay, we did it based on our earnings. So it wasn't like I had to pay 50% when he's earning six figures and I'm earning 40,000. So that was the only reason I could even afford to do that, which is a whole institutional problem with startups. I could make a whole episode on that. So really, for me, it was like, yes, there may be a period where there are zero earnings or less than that amount that I was making, but the sky's the limit. Like I can do so much better than that working for myself. And so that was really exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is true. I think what works for finances for one person is different than another. It really is based on, are you single? Where do you live? What overhead expenses do you have? So how did you go about setting those initial goals when you first went to work freelance? I mean, did you set smaller goals just to kind of figure out if this was a fit for you? Or did you say, I really do want to replace or exceed that startup income?
Yeah, for me, it was let's match what I was making at that company within the first 2 to 3 months would be awesome. And then from there, we can create systems and processes and automation and all the things you talk about that allow me to go much further than that. But that was really the point where I would feel like in my own head that this was viable if I could match and then start making more than what I was full time.
How did you decide what you wanted to focus on as a service?
So, and I really loved my time at the startup. It taught me so many things. I mean, I got to run the marketing and content teams at that company, having had no prior experience. That is amazing and absolutely changed my life. So I do want to be clear that I'm very thankful for that
Oh,
opportunity.
yeah.
And one of the things that I got to do was run the company's blog. And I had to learn SEO and what that meant in terms of blogging, something I had never touched or thought about in my entire life. And I've always really loved writing and been very good at it, but I didn't know how to make it a career because I didn't want to be like a fiction writer or write books. That's not really my style. And so when I was able to start doing SEO blogging for the company, I realized, wow, this is awesome. I love this. And it was that experience that really highlighted for me, okay, I could do this as a career and do the strategy behind this and then write it as well, because actually writing is my favorite part. And so it was a very obvious choice for me from that moment.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the process of getting your first couple of clients? That's usually such a hurdle for people.
Yeah, that was tough. Absolutely. I started on a job board. I believe it was ProBlogger. And I steered clear from the freelance marketplaces like Upwork. I don't love them. They're not for me for so many reasons. But ProBlogger had some really interesting people come on posting openings. And from there, I landed my first client who paid 3 cents per word. And at that point, I actually was doing it alongside the full-time job as just a way to test the waters. It was related to dogs, something I love. Like I could write about dogs all day long. And so that was interesting. And it allowed me to prove to myself that I can do this really fast. Like I can write really good stuff really quickly. So the 3 cents per word was actually somewhat viable at the time just because of the output I was doing. And then from there, I landed my next client, which was 4 cents per word. And just using ProBlogger. And ProBlogger for me was really easy to get people to be interested in me. I just took the time to really personalize the messages I sent to them, made sure to be responsive, communicative. You can stand out pretty easily on these sites if you just do your basic due diligence. So that was not hard. It was then transitioning to higher paying clients on retainers that was very difficult. Making that leap was a huge one. So I needed help, which is where at some point I found your stuff. And I started researching, how can I effectively market and land these clients? And I actually ended up coaching with you as well because I was really, really stuck there. And it was just not something I was going to figure out on my own. And if I did, it was going to take way too long. Why am I going to reinvent the wheel when someone out here has done exactly what I want to do? So through your resources and your coaching, I was able to figure out, okay, this is how many pitches I need to send every week. And I hate pitching. Let me tell you, I still hate it, but it's just something you have to do. And, not all parts of the things you love are going to be enjoyable, right? Like I'm a horse rider. I love horses. Like I wish I could do that for a living, but I hate mucking out stalls, right? Like there's just parts that you might not like that you have to do. So I figured out the amount of pitches I had to send per week, what those really needed to look like. And again, it's not actually that hard to stand out, right? Like as with ProBlogger, just do your due diligence, right? Like research the contact, research the company, be personable, be short and to the point, and that will help you stand out above the rest. And it was just doing that with consistency that eventually helped me find these higher paying clients. And at this point, really most of the business I get comes to me, not the other way around.
I love that. And there's 2 things that you said that I really want to call out. The first is that you took on clients while you were still working in the day job. I strongly recommend this for people rather than making the leap. You can definitely make the leap and figure it out as you go. However, you don't want to abandon your day job for something you may not end up liking or ultimately doesn't pay you enough, or you just find that it's not quite what you expected, right? So I think that's really smart. And then the other thing you talked about is running a business does really require you to wear like 17 different hats and work in all of them. And you're not going to love all of them, right? Like, do I really love doing my accounting? No, I hate it. I just find it to be such a pain. But I have to do it, right? And we have to pitch, we have to market. So it's okay if there are pieces of your business you don't like, but finding a way to fit them in a way that's authentic for you and that you can handle where it's not a huge bulk of your time is helpful. So I know one of the ways you've really been able to brand and make a name for yourself is through LinkedIn. Tell me a little bit more about why you started to feel like LinkedIn was such a good place for you to market for freelance clients.
Yeah, so this goes back to when I was full-time at that startup. Again, just I learned so many things that changed my life. And one of my coworkers, who's a really good friend of mine, Michael, he said, why do you have like 200 connections on LinkedIn? Like, you should have more than that. You don't need to know people personally. This isn't Facebook. And I was like, I never thought about that. But this is still weird. Like, I'm just going to let it be. But then that voice kept nagging in my head. It was like, I really look up to him and I think he might be onto something. So I hopped on the platform. At this point, it was over a year ago and probably a year and a half now. And I just started sending out connection requests to people who were working in startups because I was in them at the time and just had similar interests or backgrounds to mine. And I eventually hit the 500 connections mark. And by virtue of doing that, I started seeing really interesting things on my feed. And prior to becoming active on the platform, I, like most other people, just felt that LinkedIn was, an online resume and nothing more than that. And I still think a lot of us hold that misconception. But I realized people were actually creating content on the platform and building followings like influencers do on Instagram and TikTok. And that was very interesting to me. And so I sat with that for a couple of months. I was like, yeah, but I don't have anything to say. I'm like, at the time I was 22. I was like, who's going to listen to me? No one. So that held me back for a while until I realized that was dumb. We all have something to offer. Just by virtue of being ourselves and being unique with different experiences. So I started writing at the time about startups because I knew a lot of young people like myself who wanted to join startup, but for whatever reason didn't find the means to or were afraid to. And I just started posting about that. And then when I left the startup, I was like, okay, I could keep posting about this, or I could transform this and make it about my business that I've now started and write about SEO, write about blogging, write about being a young freelancer and what that means to me. And that really helped tremendously because people see those posts, they connect with them, they feel like it's genuine or helpful in some way. They send you a DM, and from there, you go through the motions, and oftentimes they'll close into a paying client. And even to this day, the last, I think, 6 weeks, it's been a while. I actually haven't posted on LinkedIn because for personal reasons and just life got in the way. And people still keep coming to me on the platform saying, I really like the stuff that you write. Would you be interested in writing for us? So I think that's really powerful and really eye-opening. Is like, if you need to take a break, as long as you've laid that foundation and been really solid and committed to it for multiple months and built an audience and a following, like, it still keeps paying dividends into the future if you stop putting 100% effort into it. So LinkedIn has changed the game for me, and I will never, ever abandon that platform.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that story and the fact that you can take a break from it. I kind of see LinkedIn as having two possible avenues for freelancers where you can use one or the other or both. One is where you're doing that proactive pitching, where you're connecting with people and you're sending them direct pitches. The other is where you're doing more of the thought leader thing. So where you're talking about your industry, you're sharing client successes, you're talking about having openings on your roster, you're talking about mistakes clients sometimes make, and they can work really well together, but they can also work independently. And so what I found is as I get busier, I don't do hardly any of the direct pitching, and I will even dial down how much I do as on the thought leader side of posting content, because like you said, this is a snowball effect where it builds on itself and you're kind of giving clues to LinkedIn and their algorithm over time about what you write about and who you are. And it's hard to say exactly when you're going to hit that traction, but it can feel for a while like you're speaking to no one, right? Like there's a time period where no one comments on your stuff, no one likes it. the views are really low. And there's also times when you may have like say 5 great ideas for pieces of content and only one of them really goes like semi-viral. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint like, oh, why was that? What, like for some reason, every time I talk about my failures or clients I've had to fire, those posts are always so much more interesting to people. And I think like you were talking about just like the honesty, the timeliness of it that gets people's interest. But that's when people start to find you. Over time, you're training LinkedIn. Hey, I'm an SEO writer, or I'm a virtual assistant, or I'm a graphic designer who helps, small businesses with real estate companies or whatever. And then you start to get found. And can you talk a little bit about how that has helped you grow your business, like being found? Are you pickier in your clients? Have you raised your rates? Has it changed anything about how you market?
Yeah, I'm very picky when it comes to taking my clients. And I really learned that from you and hearing the horror stories that you or your clients have gone through by not being quote unquote picky about who you work with. And I really took that to heart because for me, it's so miserable being in a position like that, especially if you feel trapped in it. So I filter through the people that come to me pretty heavily. I basically give everyone a discovery call, and those are generally very insightful because I try to make them open and honest conversations. And I will usually mention somewhere in that call, the importance of a healthy working relationship and what that looks like to me. And then from there, I will write literally into my contract, I am not available past 4 p.m. PST, Monday through Friday, never on the weekends, and I reserve the right to be out of the office at any time for any reason, but it won't impact the work that I'm doing for you. I write that expressly because I always want to be able to reference that if something goes wrong. So with these leads coming to me on LinkedIn, I have the power to be that picky because I have enough coming into my funnel that I'm not scrambling trying to find business. So that's been very powerful.
Yeah. And you're talking about a really important shift for more experienced freelancers too, which is where you're not just worried about the ability to get a client and a client who will pay you, but there's all these other elements to the relationship that you are thinking about, right? So is this person going to drive me crazy with communication, right? I need to know that on this discovery call. I'm going to lay down my boundaries. I might say no to the entire project if I get that sense that it's not the right fit. And as you grow your business, that becomes very, very important that you really, I don't know what like the exact word is, but I guess I view every new potential project with hesitation. And it's really kind of how our clients look at us, right? They're like, I don't know if this is the right person or this is who I want to hire. Even if someone comes to me via a personal referral, I'll still be positive about that relationship, but I'll also be kind of hesitant because you're looking for some of those red flags. What are things you're looking and listening for during those discovery calls that would give you a sense of, yeah, this is a no-go. Like, I just can't work with this person. I'm not even going to try to do a test job with them.
Yeah. So there's 2 big things. One, I like to intentionally test. So I'll give you an example. One time, a prospective client, unfortunately, and I never do this, someone else gave them my phone number, which is a big no-no. And I told that person later, I was like, please never give a prospective client my personal information. Like, give them my email. And before anything had gone wrong, I said, let me tell you, and you'll learn at some point too, people tend to take advantage of that and try to cross your boundaries. And you just want to prevent that from ever happening. And nothing had happened yet. And then the next day, it was Friday at 5:30 my time. And this person texts me and says, where is the proposal? And I'm like, we just talked yesterday. I've got other stuff going on. I will get it to you early next week. That's what I was thinking. I never sent them the proposal. I said, sorry, this won't work. I don't think we're going to be a good fit because we weren't even signed on together. And I was already getting messages like that at that hour to my phone number. So what I will do is I will intentionally take a few days to send a proposal. Generally, I write the proposal within like 30 minutes right after the call while it's fresh in my head, but I don't send it right away. And if I'm getting a message the next morning that says, hey, where's the proposal? That's a red flag, right? Because if you trust me and you want to work with me, you trust that I'm going to get it done in a timely manner and it's going to be good work. You don't need to follow up with me like 24 hours later. So that's really big. And I think testing that intentionally is very important. The other thing is, what kinds of questions does this potential client ask me on our discovery calls? So are they drilling me? Is this really an interrogation? Or are they more open to a free flowing conversation where they want to hear about me and my expertise? I've had some clients that will just come at me like, can you make it so that I'll rank on the first page of Google? And it's like, or like even the first result on Google. And I said, anyone that promises to rank you on the first result of Google is lying to you, or they're going to use techniques that are going to get you blacklisted. So the answer is no, I can't. And this is why. And this is why you still need to hire an expert to maximize your chances. And it's still worth putting in the work for the payoff. So the types of questions that a person will ask you can be very, very insightful if you know the questions that you want them to ask. So that has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's good to know, because I think some clients, they may be used to working with employees, or maybe they don't have a real sense of how to work with freelancers productively. And so they'll jump into that more employee mode of, hey, we talked yesterday. Where is the proposal? The more you can kind of take control early in the relationship and tell them what the relationship is going to look like from your perspective, the easier it is to protect those boundaries and to see the people who are going to push up against it so much that it's not even worth bringing them on as clients. So by telling them when you're going to be available and not available, by asking them to come through your email rather than your phone, by telling your referral partners that as well, by giving them a sense of, yeah, it's going to take me a few days to do the proposal. I'll send it when I have time, and not necessarily letting someone push you around. That really kind of shows you the type of person that you are working with. So to pivot back quickly to LinkedIn for a little bit, for the freelancer who is just getting started on LinkedIn and using it as a content marketing tool to attract clients, do you have a handful of tips of, like, even if you're a total beginner, doing these couple of things will help you get things off on the right foot?
Definitely. And I would say too, if you're really looking for something structured, like Laura has a great course on this, like, not to plug her, but really it has been very helpful even for me and still at this point. So if you want something succinct like that, there are courses out there can help. But the quick tip I would give, right, is to figure out, like, okay, who is the type of person that I'm attracting on LinkedIn and for what purpose? So in my case, I'm an SEO blog writer first and foremost, as well as strategist. So I use those keywords, and not in a way that keyword stuffs, right? Like any SEO blogger knows how to walk that line. But I just organically sprinkle it into, like, my headline, my about section, the description of my business and the work experience. And that's perhaps the most important thing you can do if you're trying to get those people who are searching out freelance X or virtual assistants. Like, you need to have those in your profile so that they can find you. If you're the best X in the world, but they can't find you, that's useless. So that, I would say, is tip number one. Tip number two is have a really killer headline. So, like, in your LinkedIn profile, you'll have your name and then a little tagline about you and what you do. Make sure it's really attractive and really interesting and encourages people to click your profile, because that is a sort of preview that they will see about you when you make comments or you leave posts or you do things like that. That will be displayed. So make sure that's really captivating. Those would be my two biggest tips.
I love that. Yeah. And you're right on. You really need to have something that is going to capture people's attention, even on LinkedIn, where people have more of an attention span than maybe other social media platforms. One of the other reasons for doing that is that some people who see your posts will not be in your immediate connection network. So sometimes when you trigger the algorithm just right, like, it might show up in my feed that 3 people in my connection network commented on your post. And so what I'm going to see is your original post and their comments. But if I don't know who you are, that little headline and what you're writing about is going to tell me a lot. And that may be something where I want to connect with and follow you as well. So make sure that you have those important elements in place. Definitely use the keywords. LinkedIn does not know who you are unless you give them really clear signals about that. So you have given so many helpful tips to my audience about what to think about as you're deciding if freelancing full-time is for you, how to kind of balance that if you're in a current position, and how to get started and get some traction early on. Where can listeners go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so the first place, if you're interested at all in working with me, would be my website, which is my last name, Mameesh. And I don't know if this will be written somewhere. It's hard to cipher it out, but mameeshcontent.com. And then similarly, if you search my first name, Caroline, with my last name, Mameesh, and it starts with an M, you will find me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to chat with you there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.